He bought a mute alien slave for pennies. When he reached for her, she shouted, "Run!" James McCarthy wiped the sweat from his brow as the twin alien suns beat down mercilessly on the ramshackle market. The dusty, lifeless planet hadn't been his first choice for retirement, but after 52 years of life, most spent watching comrades die in battles across the galaxy, nowhere felt like home anymore. "Come on, Duke," he muttered to the aging German shepherd padding faithfully beside him. The dog's muzzle had gone gray, much like the short chestnut hair at James's temples, but both man and beast remained fit and alert despite their years. James navigated through the crowded bazaar, his tall frame and human features drawing curious glances from the various alien species haggling over wares. The market stank of unfamiliar spices, unwashed bodies, and the peculiar metallic tang that seemed to permeate the atmosphere of this godforsaken rock. He'd come here seeking solitude after retiring from the Earth Defense Corps. The pension was decent enough, and living was cheap on the frontier worlds. Most importantly, no one asked questions about his past. A commotion erupted ahead, angry shouts in a guttural, alien language followed by the unmistakable sound of something being struck repeatedly. Duke's ears perked up, a low growl rumbling in his chest. "Easy, boy," James said, though his own body had tensed instinctively. Rounding a corner between two filthy tents, he stopped cold. A grotesquely fat alien merchant with mottled orange skin was viciously beating what appeared to be a humanoid female. She cowered on the ground, her delicate frame curled protectively inward, silvery hair matted with dust. Through the tattered rags barely covering her body, James could see her skin had a soft bluish hue, now marred by bruises and dirt. "Worthless!" the merchant bellowed in broken standard. "No speak! No work! Waste of food!" Before James could process what he was doing, he had crossed the distance between them. "That's enough," he said, his voice carrying the quiet authority that had once commanded troops into battle. The merchant turned, revealing a face dominated by a repulsive, toothy smile. "Human want something? I have many fine." "I want you to stop beating her," James interrupted. The alien's four eyes blinked in sequence. "This—" He kicked the girl again, causing her to whimper. "Just slave. Mute slave. Stupid and useless, huh?" Duke barked sharply, hackles raised. The merchant eyed the dog nervously, then looked back at James with a calculating expression. "You want mute slave? Take her. 10 credits. 5, James countered automatically, disgusted with himself for haggling over a sentient being, but playing along with the charade. 8, 5, and I don't report you to the sector authorities for slave trafficking." The merchant's face contorted with rage, then settled into a sly grin. 5 credits, human takes worthless slave. Good deal for me." James transferred the credits, then knelt beside the girl. She was trembling, eyes downcast. Up close, he could see that beneath the grime and bruises, her features were delicate and almost elfin, with high cheekbones and almond-shaped eyes. "Hey," he said softly, extending his hand. "You're safe now." "I'm not going to hurt you." Her head snapped up, revealing eyes of deep violet that widened in unmistakable terror. She looked past him, focusing on something in the distance, and then did the impossible. The mute slave opened her mouth and screamed, "Run!" James whirled around. At the edge of the marketplace, silhouetted against the harsh desert sun, stood a group of heavily armed aliens. Even at this distance, he recognized the distinctive armor of the Crimson Talon Syndicate, the most feared criminal organization in the sector. The fat merchant's laughter rang out behind him. "Stupid human! She not mute, she valuable. Run away from Crimson Talon. We're 1,000 credits, not 5. James didn't hesitate. He scooped the alien girl into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, and bolted in the opposite direction, Duke racing alongside them. "My ship's not far," he told her as they ran. "Can you hold on?" She nodded, her arms tightening around his neck. Behind them, angry shouts and the distinctive whine of energy weapons being primed echoed through the market. The chase had begun. "This way!" James hissed, veering sharply between two sagging tents. The alien girl clung to him, her slender arms wrapped around his neck, as he carried her through the labyrinthine market. Duke ran ahead, his military training evident as he scouted their path, occasionally looking back to ensure his master followed. The marketplace was a chaotic maze, perfect for losing pursuers but equally easy to become trapped. James relied on instinct honed through decades of combat situations, zigzagging through narrow passages between stalls while avoiding dead ends. "They're spreading out," the girl whispered urgently against his ear, her breath warm and tinged with an unfamiliar, sweet scent. 3 squads, standard Talon search pattern. James glanced at her in surprise. "You know their tactics?" She nodded grimly. "I was their property for 2 cycles." A burst of energy fire scorched the tent fabric beside them. James ducked lower, sheltering the girl with his broad shoulders as he picked up speed. "Duke, find cover!" he commanded. The shepherd immediately darted toward a low-hanging awning made of some alien hide. James followed, sliding beneath it and pressing against a stack of crates that smelled strongly of fermented fruit. For a moment they remained still, only their ragged breathing disturbing the silence. James set the girl down carefully, but kept a protective arm around her shoulders. She was trembling, though whether from fear or exhaustion, he couldn't tell. "I'm James McCarthy," he said quietly. "The furry gentleman is Duke." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "Lara," she replied, "of the Alori people." "Nice to meet you, Lyra. Now want to tell me why the most dangerous criminal syndicate in the sector is hunting you?" Her violet eyes darted nervously to the market beyond their hiding place. "They use my people. Our minds have certain capabilities they exploit." "Psychic abilities?" James asked, remembering rumors about the Alori. "We can perceive possibilities, glimpses of potential futures." She touched her temple. "The Talon forced me to foresee outcomes of their operations. When I refused, they used pain to encourage compliance." James felt a familiar anger rising in his chest, the same righteous fury that had driven him through countless battles against those who preyed on the defenseless. "How did you escape?" "I saw a chance, a rare convergence of possibilities, and took it." Her eyes met his, suddenly intense. "Just as I saw you in the market today." "You knew I would help you?" "I saw the possibility. Many paths led to my death today, but the brightest thread led to you." Her hand tentatively touched his arm. "Thank you for following it." Duke's ears suddenly perked up, and he emitted a low warning growl. James tensed, reaching for the combat knife strapped to his ankle, the only weapon he carried these days. "They're close," Lara whispered. James assessed their options. "My ship is docked in Bay 12, northeast quadrant. We need a distraction. The merchant who sold me, Garuk, he deals in stolen tech. 2 stalls back, there's a crate of unstable power cells." James raised an eyebrow. "How convenient." "Not convenience. Probability." A mischievous glint appeared in her eyes. "I may have nudged certain possibilities while in captivity." For the first time in years, James felt a genuine smile tug at his lips. "Remind me never to play cards with you." He whistled softly to Duke, who immediately returned to his side. "Stay with Lara. Protect." The dog positioned himself beside the alien woman, his intelligent eyes fixed on her, as if memorizing her scent and appearance. James crept back along their path, keeping low. The merchant's stall was unattended, its owner likely still gloating over his deception or possibly helping the Talon enforcers. The crate Lara mentioned sat partially open, revealing cylindrical power cells with warning symbols in several languages. With practiced efficiency, James rigged 2 cells to overload, setting them to detonate in 30 seconds. He retreated quickly to their hiding spot. "Cover your ear," he warned, pulling Lara close and shielding her with his body. The explosion wasn't massive, but in the confined space of the market, it created perfect chaos. Aliens of all species scattered in panic, stalls collapsed and merchandise went flying. Through the confusion, James spotted the Talon enforcers momentarily disoriented, their formation broken. "Now," he said, lifting Lara again. "Duke, lead!" They emerged from hiding, blending with the fleeing crowd. James kept his head down, using the panicked market-goers as cover, while Duke forged a path toward the spaceport. "They won't give up," Lara said, her lips close to his ear as he carried her. "I'm too valuable." "Neither will I," James replied with grim determination. "I didn't survive 3 wars and retire to this dustball just to hand you back to slavers." She studied his face with those uncanny violet eyes. "You've lost much." "Everyone does eventually." "Not everything." Her slender fingers brushed his jawline in a gesture that felt surprisingly intimate. "Some threads of possibility still shine brightly for you, James McCarthy." For a brief moment, their eyes locked, and James felt something stir within him, something he'd thought long dead. Then Duke barked urgently, breaking the spell. "We'll discuss my glowing future prospects once we're safely off planet," James said, refocusing on their escape. "Bay 12 is just ahead." Bay 12 was mercifully deserted when they arrived. James's ship, the Wayward Sun, sat waiting, its weathered hull bearing the scars of countless journeys across the frontier worlds. Nothing fancy, just a modified Terran Corvette-class transport with enough room for a man, his dog, and the occasional cargo run that paid for fuel and supplies. "Not much to look at," James admitted as he punched in the access code, "but she's got it where it counts." The airlock hissed open. Duke bounded inside first, performing a quick security sweep as James carried Lara aboard. Once inside, he set her down gently in the co-pilot's seat. "Can you fly?" he asked, already flipping switches to initiate the launch sequence. "I can navigate," she replied, her slender fingers hovering intuitively over the unfamiliar controls. "Your technology is different, but I understand the principles." James nodded, impressed. "Good. I'll handle the flying. You keep an eye out for trouble." The engines rumbled to life, and James felt the familiar vibration through the deck plates. It was comforting, like the heartbeat of an old friend. Duke settled into his customary spot behind the pilot's chair, vigilant even in the relative safety of the ship. "Strap in," James instructed Lara. "Takeoff might be rough." As the Wayward Sun lifted off, James kept the thrust at minimum to avoid drawing attention. They rose steadily through the planet's thin atmosphere, the dusty landscape receding beneath them. "We made it," Lara breathed, her violet eyes wide with cautious hope. James knew better. "Not yet. We haven't." He glanced at her. "Any psychic insights about what's waiting for us up there?" She closed her eyes, her delicate features tensing with concentration. When they snapped open again, alarm was evident. "Talon ships? 3? No, 4 vessels in high orbit. They're positioned to intercept any craft leaving the planet." "Damn!" James checked his sensors, which confirmed her warning. 4 Talon cruisers had taken up blockade positions around the planet. His small ship wouldn't stand a chance in direct confrontation. "They're very determined to get you back," he observed. Lara's hands clenched in her lap. "I'm not the only Alori they've enslaved, but I'm the strongest precognitive they've captured. Without me, their success rate on major operations drops by 60%. "So you're bad for business," James said with a grim smile. "I like you more by the minute." A faint blush colored her bluish cheeks. "The asteroid field," she said suddenly, pointing to the navigation display. "There. It's our best chance." James studied the dense field of space rocks orbiting the system's second planet. It was a treacherous route, but he'd navigated worse during the Proxima Centauri campaign. "It'll be tight," he warned, "and rough." "I trust your skills," Lara said simply. Something about her quiet confidence stirred something in James that had lain dormant for years. He adjusted course toward the asteroid field, keeping the ship's energy signature as low as possible to delay detection. They were halfway to the field when the sensors blared a warning. One of the Talon cruisers had altered course to intercept. "They've spotted us," James announced, pushing the engines to full power. The Wayward Sun surged forward, racing toward the relative safety of the asteroids. "They're launching fighters," Lara reported, reading the sensor display with surprising proficiency. James glanced at her. "How many?" "6. Standard Talon pursuit formation." The first shots from the pursuing craft streaked past their hull, uncomfortably close. James began evasive maneuvers, the ship responding to his experienced touch like an extension of his own body. "Hold on," he warned as they plunged into the asteroid field. Massive rocks tumbled chaotically around them, some as small as the ship, others the size of small moons. James weaved through the deadly maze with precision born of decades of combat flying, using the asteroids as shields against their pursuers. A particularly daring Talon fighter followed them into a narrow gap between two converging asteroids. James waited until the last possible moment, then cut thrust and rotated the ship 90 degrees to slip through sideways. The Talon pilot wasn't as skilled or as lucky. The resulting explosion briefly illuminated the cockpit. "One down," James muttered. Lara gasped suddenly, her eyes wide. "Left! Hard left!" James didn't hesitate, yanking the controls. A massive asteroid hurtled through the space they'd occupied a split second earlier. "How did you—" "I told you!" Possibilities. She was breathing hard, her focus intense. "Right, then dive." Again, James followed her instructions without question. Another fighter exploded against an asteroid where they would have been. They fell into a rhythm, James handling the flying while Lara called out warnings seconds before dangers materialized. Duke watched them work together, his intelligent eyes tracking between the two as if witnessing something remarkable. "They're pulling back," Lara announced after they'd eliminated a third fighter, regrouping with the cruiser. James checked the sensors. "We've got a narrow window. If we can reach the far side of the field, we can make the jump to hyperspace before they can reposition." Lara nodded, then suddenly clutched her head, wincing in pain. "What's wrong?" James asked, concern evident in his voice. "Using my abilities so intensely, it takes a toll." She straightened, visibly forcing herself to focus. "I'm fine. Keep going." James wasn't convinced, but they had no choice. He navigated deeper into the asteroid field, following Lara's increasingly strained directions. When she swayed in her seat, nearly fainting, he reached over and squeezed her hand. "Stay with me," he said softly. "Just a little longer." Her fingers intertwined with his, drawing strength from his touch. "I'm trying." As they neared the edge of the asteroid field, the remaining Talon fighters made one final desperate push. Energy blasts rocked the ship, and warning lights flashed across the console. "Shields at 40%, James reported, his voice steady despite the danger. "We just need a few more minutes." Lara's eyes suddenly widened. "James! The passage ahead, it's going to collapse." Sure enough, several massive asteroids were drifting into alignment, threatening to cut off their escape route. James pushed the engines beyond safety limits, the ship shuddering under the strain. "We'll make it," he promised, though he wasn't entirely sure himself. They shot through the narrowing gap with mere meters to spare, the asteroids crashing together behind them, sealing off the pursuit. The open space of the system stretched before them, and James immediately began calculating the hyperspace jump. "We did it," Lara whispered, exhaustion evident in her voice. James allowed himself a small smile. "We're not home free yet, but we've bought ourselves some breathing room." As the stars elongated around them and the wayward sun leapt into hyperspace, Lara finally surrendered to exhaustion, slumping in her seat. Without thinking, James reached over to brush a strand of silver hair from her face. "Rest now," he said softly. "You've earned it." James watched Lara sleep in his quarters, her silver hair fanned across his pillow, her chest rising and falling with each peaceful breath. He'd carried her there after she'd collapsed from exhaustion in the cockpit, gently laying her on his bed before returning to monitor their hyperspace trajectory. 6 hours had passed. The wayward sun hummed steadily as it carved its path through the dimensional shortcut, heading toward the outer rim territories where the Talon's influence was weaker. Duke lay curled at the foot of the bed, his protective instincts apparently extending to their new companion. When Lara finally stirred, her violet eyes fluttered open, immediately finding James where he sat in a chair nearby. "How long was I out?" she asked, her voice still husky with sleep. "Long enough for me to worry," he replied, offering her a container of water. "You pushed yourself too hard back there." She accepted the water gratefully, drinking deeply. "Unnecessary risk. The Talon would have recaptured me otherwise." "About that?" James leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I think it's time you told me exactly what we're dealing with. Not just what they want from you, but what they're doing with your people." Lara sat up, drawing the thin blanket around her shoulders. In the soft lighting of the cabin, with the dirt and grime washed away, her beauty was even more apparent. Her blue-tinged skin had a subtle luminescence, and the bruises were already fading. Her species apparently healed faster than humans. The Crimson Talon discovered my homeworld 3 cycles ago, she began, her gaze distant. The Elori were a peaceful race. We had no weapons, no defenses. Our abilities to glimpse potential futures were used only for harmony, to avoid natural disasters and guide our society toward prosperity. She paused, pain evident in her expression. The Talon saw only profit. They slaughtered those who resisted and enslaved the rest. They use our precognitive abilities to plan their operations, to anticipate security measures, to predict market fluctuations for their smuggling operations. And you were particularly valuable, James prompted. Lara nodded. My gift is stronger than most. I can see further with greater clarity. They made me help plan raids on civilian transports, predict patrol patterns for their drug shipments. Her voice broke. People died because of what I saw. James moved to sit beside her on the bed, his weathered hand covering hers. You were a prisoner, Lara. A slave. The blood is on their hands, not yours. You don't understand, she whispered. The Talon's operations have expanded dramatically because of us. They're no longer just criminals. They're becoming an empire. They've infiltrated governments, corrupted officials. They're planning something massive, something that will destabilize the entire sector. What exactly? I don't know the details. They compartmentalize information, even from their precognitives, but I overheard enough to know it involves attacking multiple human colonies simultaneously. James's jaw tightened. Despite his self-imposed exile, the thought of innocent human settlements being ravaged by the Talon stirred his protective instincts. How many of your people do they have? He asked. Dozens, maybe hundreds. We're kept separate, used like tools. Her fingers tightened around his. James, we can't just run. They'll never stop hunting me, and even if we escape, my people will continue to suffer. The determination in her voice reminded him of comrades he'd served with. Brave souls who refused to surrender to injustice, no matter the odds. What are you suggesting? That we take on the entire Crimson Talon syndicate ourselves? He shook his head. I'm just one retired soldier with an outdated ship. You're human, she said, as if that explained everything. Your species does the impossible regularly. It's why the Talon fears human expansion more than anything else. We're stubborn, I'll give you that. It's more than stubbornness. Lara's hand moved to his face, her touch feather-light as she traced the lines at the corner of his eye. Humans possess something unique, an adaptability, a drive that other species lack. Where others see insurmountable odds, you see challenges to overcome. The admiration in her voice warmed something in James that had been cold for too long. Her face was close to his now, those violet eyes studying him with an intensity that made his heart beat faster. There's a Talon command center, she continued, her voice softer. On Helios Prime, that's where they coordinate their operations, where they keep their records. If we could access those files, expose their operations to the Galactic Alliance, that's suicide, James said, but without conviction. Part of him, the part that had led troops into battle against impossible odds, was already calculating angles, considering approaches. Perhaps, her lips curved into a smile, but I've seen possibilities where we succeed. The space between them seemed charged with electricity. James was acutely aware of her closeness, of the subtle, sweet scent that seemed unique to her species. It had been years since he'd felt this kind of attraction, this pull toward another being. You've been alone too long, Lara whispered, as if reading his thoughts. So have you, he replied. When their lips met, it felt inevitable, like two stars whose gravitational pull had finally brought them together. Her skin was cooler than a human's, but her mouth was warm, eager. James pulled her closer, his strong arms encircling her slender form as the kiss deepened. Duke, sensing the change in atmosphere, discreetly padded out of the room, the door sliding shut behind him. What followed was a discovery of differences and similarities, her skin glowing faintly in the dimmed lights, his calloused hands gentle against her softness. They moved together with increasing urgency, finding a rhythm that transcended their different biologies. For James, it was more than physical release. It was connection, something he convinced himself he no longer needed. Afterward, they lay tangled together, her head resting on his chest, his fingers tracing patterns along her spine. "That was," she began. "Unexpected?" he offered. "Wonderful," she corrected. "Alori rarely bond physically with other species. It's considered unusual." "Regretting it already?" There was vulnerability beneath his light tone. "No." She propped herself up to look at him. "Among my people, physical bonding creates a deeper connection. It enhances our ability to sense each other's futures. And what do you sense about mine?" Her expression grew serious. "Danger, but also purpose. You've been drifting, James, running from your past, but there's still greatness in you, a chance to make a difference again." He was silent for a long moment. "I'm not a hero, Lara. I've failed too many people to believe in that anymore." "Yet you didn't fail me." Her hand rested over his heart. "You saved me when you had every reason to walk away." Before he could respond, the ship's alarm blared. They sprang apart, years of survival instincts overriding the moment of intimacy. "We're dropping out of hyperspace," James said, already pulling on his clothes. "Something's wrong." The wayward sun shuddered violently as it tore free from hyperspace, systems blaring warnings across every console. James sprinted to the cockpit with Lara close behind. Duke already there and alert, his ears perked at the unfamiliar alarms. "Interdiction field," James growled, his hands flying over the controls. "Talon technology. They've pulled us back into normal space." Through the viewport, the stars no longer streaked by in hyperspace blur, but hung motionless against the black void. More ominously, a Talon cruiser loomed in the distance, its distinctive red hull markings visible even at this range. "How did they find us?" Lara asked, sliding into the co-pilot seat. "They must have predicted our trajectory." James activated the ship's defensive systems, meager as they were, "or they've got informants monitoring hyperspace routes." The comm system crackled to life. "Unidentified vessel. This is the Crimson Talon enforcement ship, Bloodmark. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. We only want the Alori female. Comply, and the human may live." James cut the transmission. "Like hell." He turned to Lara, whose face had gone pale, the luminescence of her skin dimming with fear. "I won't let them take you back," he promised. Her violet eyes met his. "I know." The moment hung between them, charged with the intimacy they'd shared and the danger they now faced. Then James turned back to the controls, his mind racing through options. "The hyperdrive's offline. The interdiction field sees to that. But if we can get beyond its range..." He punched in a series of commands, diverting power to the sublight engines. "Hold on!" The wayward sun lurched forward, accelerating away from the Talon cruiser. The ship's engines whined in protest as James pushed them beyond recommended output. "They're launching fighters," Lara reported, reading the sensor display. "Of course they are." James banked the ship hard, heading toward a nearby debris field, remnants of an ancient battle or perhaps a destroyed moon. "We need to buy time. I need to get to the engine room." "What are you planning?" "A trick I learned during the Orion conflict. It's risky, but it might get us out of here." He glanced at her. "Can you fly this thing if I talk you through it?" Lara nodded without hesitation. "I can try." "Good enough." James stood, placing her hands on the controls. "Keep us moving. Use the debris for cover. Don't try to outrun the fighters. Just keep them from getting a clean shot." "What about Duke?" The German shepherd was watching them intently, as if understanding the gravity of the situation. "He stays with you." "Duke, protect," James commanded. The dog moved to Lara's side, his posture alert and protective. James squeezed Lara's shoulder, then headed for the engine room at the rear of the ship. The wayward sun rocked as it took a glancing hit, but he kept his balance, making his way through the narrow corridors. In the engine room, he immediately began rerouting power conduits and bypassing safety protocols. It was a dangerous modification, one that could potentially destroy the ship if miscalculated, but it was their only chance. Through the ship's intercom, he heard Lara's voice, tense but controlled. "3 fighters on our tail. I'm staying ahead of them, but barely." "Keep it up," he called back. "I need 5 more minutes." "We might not have 5 minutes." As if to emphasize her point, the ship took another hit, more substantial this time. Warning lights flashed as one of the auxiliary power cells went offline. James worked faster, his experienced hands moving with precision despite the urgency. This was familiar territory, the rush of adrenaline, the focus that came with fighting for survival. He'd missed this, he realized. The years of quiet retirement had dulled something essential in him. Another hit rocked the ship. "James," Lara called. "Whatever you're doing, hurry." He made the final connection, then sealed the access panel. "Done! I'm coming back." When he returned to the cockpit, he found Lara handling the controls with surprising skill, weaving the ship through the debris field, while Duke stood braced against her seat, vigilant and steady despite the chaotic maneuvering. "You're a natural," James said, sliding back into the pilot's seat. "I've seen many possible ways to fly," she replied with a hint of a smile. "Some were bound to be useful." James took over the controls. "What I've done is rig the hyperdrive to create a localized disruption. It won't get us into hyperspace, but it should temporarily neutralize their interdiction field." "Won't that damage our hyperdrive?" "Almost certainly," he admitted. "But if it works, we'll have a few seconds to jump to hyperspace before it burns out completely." Lara's eyes widened. "And if we're stranded without a hyperdrive?" "Then we'll face that problem when we come to it." He gave her a roguish grin. "One crisis at a time." Despite the danger, she found herself smiling back. There was something irresistible about his confidence, his refusal to surrender to fear. "Ready?" he asked. She nodded, her hand finding his on the control panel. The touch was brief but electric, a reminder of the connection they'd formed in his quarters. James activated the modified hyperdrive. The ship groaned ominously as energy built up in systems never designed to function this way. Warning alarms blared, and the control panel lit up with critical alerts. "Come on, old girl," James murmured to his ship. "Just a little more." The energy buildup reached critical mass. A pulse of blue-white energy erupted from the wayward sun, expanding outward in a sphere that engulfed the pursuing fighters. Their systems flickered and died as the pulse disrupted all active energy fields in its radius, including the Talon cruiser's interdiction field. "Now!" James shouted, slamming the hyperspace controls forward. For a terrible moment, nothing happened. Then the stars began to stretch, and the wayward sun lurched forward into the familiar blue tunnel of hyperspace. The victory was short-lived. Secondary explosions rocked the ship as the hyperdrive tore itself apart from the strain. James fought the controls, trying to keep them stable in the hyperspace corridor. "We're losing containment," he reported grimly. "We'll have to drop back to normal space." "How far did we get?" Lara asked. "Far enough, I hope." He initiated the emergency exit sequence. The ship shuddered violently as it returned to normal space. The systems failed across the board, leaving them drifting with minimal power. Through the viewport, an unfamiliar star system greeted them. A yellow sun with several planets visible at this distance. "Where are we?" Lara asked. James checked the navigational system, which was still partially functional. "Uncharted territory, beyond Talon-controlled space. We're safe for now." The relief was palpable. Lara sagged in her seat, the tension draining from her slender frame. Duke whined softly, sensing the immediate danger had passed, and nuzzled her hand. "You did it," she said, looking at James with undisguised admiration. "We did it," he corrected her. "You flew like you were born in a cockpit." The moment stretched between them, the shared triumph creating a bond as powerful as their earlier physical connection. Without thinking, James leaned across the space between their seats and kissed her. Her lips were cool against his, but eager, returning his passion with an intensity that surprised him. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, James gestured to the damaged control panel. "We should assess the damage. See what can be salvaged." "Always practical," she teased, but her eyes remained on his, filled with something more than just gratitude or desire. Something that looked remarkably like hope. "Someone has to be," he replied with a smile. "We're not out of trouble yet. The hyperdrive is completely fried, and we're drifting in unknown space with limited supplies. Yet I sense you're not overly concerned." James shrugged. "I've been in worse situations. Besides," he added, his voice softening, "the company's better this time." The third planet from the yellow sun revealed itself as a vibrant blue-green world, with swirling white clouds and vast oceans. James guided the damaged wayward sun into a stable orbit, conserving what little power remained in the engines. "Atmosphere is breathable," he announced, studying the readouts. "Gravity slightly less than Earth standard, and there's definitely advanced technology down there. I'm picking up energy signatures consistent with a developed civilization." Lara leaned forward, her silver hair falling over her shoulder as she examined the sensor display. "Can you tell if they're friendly?" "Sensors aren't that sophisticated," James replied with a wry smile. "But we don't have much choice. We're running on auxiliary power. Life support is compromised, and we've got maybe 2 days of supplies left." Duke padded over to the viewport, his ears perked as he studied the planet below, as if he could somehow sense what awaited them. "I could try to see," Lara offered hesitantly. "Look at the possibilities." James turned to her, concern evident in his expression. "The last time you pushed your abilities, you collapsed. I won't risk your health." It would be a gentle look, just skimming the surface of potential futures. She touched his arm, her cool fingers a pleasant contrast to his warm skin. "Trust me, James. I know my limits now." After a moment's consideration, he nodded. "All right, but at the first sign of strain, you stop. Deal?" "Deal." Lara closed her eyes, her features relaxing into a serene expression. A faint luminescence seemed to emanate from beneath her blue-tinged skin, pulsing gently with her heartbeat. James watched, fascinated by the visible manifestation of her gift. After several minutes, her eyes fluttered open, the violet irises slightly brighter than before. "They call themselves the galaxies," she said, her voice carrying a dreamlike quality. "They're peaceful, primarily scientists and philosophers." "And they?" A look of surprise crossed her face. "They know of humans, though they have had limited contact. They consider your species fascinating." "Well, that's something," James said. "Any chance they might help us repair our ship?" "Better than that." Lara's expression brightened. "They have a communication array powerful enough to reach human space, and they're curious about visitors." James felt a weight lift from his shoulders. After days of constant danger and desperate escapes, the prospect of finding allies, even temporary ones, was almost too good to believe. "Then let's introduce ourselves." He began plotting a descent trajectory, using the remaining fuel with careful precision. The wayward sun entered the atmosphere with less grace than usual, the damaged systems protesting the strain. James compensated with expert handling, guiding the ship toward a large island continent in the northern hemisphere where the energy signatures were strongest. As they descended through cloud cover, a sprawling city came into view, a harmonious blend of architecture and nature, with gleaming spires rising from lush greenery and structures that seemed to flow organically from the landscape. "It's beautiful," Lara whispered. A voice crackled over the comm system, speaking in flawless standard. "Unidentified vessel, you are entering Galaxy airspace. We detect significant damage to your craft. Do you require assistance?" James exchanged a surprised glance with Lara before responding. "This is Captain James McCarthy of the Earth vessel Wayward Sun. We've suffered critical system failures and request emergency landing clearance." "Understood, Captain McCarthy. We are transmitting coordinates for a landing platform, and medical and technical teams will meet you upon arrival." The transmission ended and James adjusted course toward the provided coordinates. "Well, that was unexpectedly civilized." "I told you they were peaceful," Lara said, a hint of smugness in her tone. The landing was rougher than James would have liked, but the Wayward Sun touched down in one piece on a circular platform at the city's edge. Through the viewport, they could see a delegation of tall, willowy beings approaching, the Galaxy presumably, with iridescent skin in shades of green and gold. "Ready to make some new friends?" James asked, powering down the remaining systems. Lara nodded, though her expression had grown pensive. "James, before we go out there, there's something I need to tell you." He turned to face her fully, noting the sudden seriousness in her tone. "What is it?" "When I looked at the possibilities, I saw something else." She hesitated. "The Galaxy have encountered other Aloy before. Refugees like me." "That's good news, isn't it?" "Yes, but..." She took his hand, her fingers intertwining with his. They've also developed technology that can amplify our precognitive abilities. They've been helping my people fight back against the Talon. James processed this information, understanding its implications. So this isn't just a pit stop for repairs. This could be a turning point in your people's struggle. Yes, her violet eyes searched his. But what does that mean for us? For this? She gestured between them, indicating the connection that had grown from desperate circumstances into something neither had expected. James reached up to cup her face, his thumb gently tracing the curve of her cheek. I didn't rescue you just to say goodbye, Lara. But your life was empty, he finished for her. I've been running from my past, hiding from who I really am. You changed that, he smiled, the lines around his eyes crinkling. Besides, I've always had a talent for fighting impossible battles. Sounds like your people could use someone like that. The tension in her expression melted away, replaced by a radiant smile that seemed to make her entire being glow. She leaned forward, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that conveyed everything words couldn't: gratitude, passion, and something deeper that neither was quite ready to name. Duke barked, breaking the moment with his impatient reminder that they weren't alone. All right, boy, James chuckled, scratching the shepherd behind his ears. Let's go meet our hosts. They exited the ship together, James supporting Lara, whose strength was still not fully recovered. Duke stayed close to her side, his protective instincts now firmly extended to include her in his pack. The Luraxi delegation greeted them with formal gestures that reminded James of ancient Earth ceremonies, slight bows, with hands pressed together. Their leader, taller than the others, with skin that shimmered like sunlight on water, stepped forward. Welcome to Lurin, Captain McCarthy. I am Elder Theron. His gaze shifted to Lara, recognition dawning in his large, faceted eyes. And you are Aloy. You are most welcome here, Sister of the Stars. Lara returned the formal gesture. I am Lara. Thank you for your hospitality. We have prepared accommodations for you while your vessel is examined, Theron continued. Our technicians are quite familiar with human engineering. The Galactic Alliance has been most generous in sharing technological knowledge. As they followed the Luraxi delegation toward the city, James leaned close to Lara. The Galactic Alliance? Out here in uncharted space? Perhaps not as uncharted as we thought, she replied quietly. The possibilities are expanding in ways I hadn't foreseen. Their quarters were spacious and comfortable, with large windows overlooking the alien city. Duke immediately claimed a soft cushion near the window, settling in with a contented sigh after thoroughly inspecting every corner. Left alone while the Luraxi examined their ship, James and Lara found themselves in a moment of rare peace. The constant threat of pursuit temporarily lifted. They could finally breathe, finally think beyond immediate survival. What happens now? Lara asked, standing by the window as the alien sun began to set, casting her silver hair in golden hues. James moved to stand behind her, his arms encircling her waist. Now we rest. Tomorrow we learn what the Luraxi know about the Talon, about your people, and then... And then, she prompted, leaning back against his solid warmth. And then we fight, he said simply. Together. She turned in his arms, her expression serious yet hopeful. You would do that? Join a war that isn't yours? It became mine the moment I bought a mute slave in that marketplace. His lips quirked in a half-smile. Best 5 credits I ever spent. Their laughter mingled as they came together again, finding in each other's arms the comfort and passion that had sustained them through their desperate flight. As night fell over the alien city, they reaffirmed their connection, their bodies speaking a language that transcended species and worlds. In the quiet aftermath, as Lara slept peacefully beside him, James gazed out at the unfamiliar stars. For the first time in years, he felt purpose stirring within him, not just the drive to survive, but to protect, to fight for something greater than himself. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles, but tonight, in this peaceful haven, he allowed himself to hope. The Galactic Alliance Council Chamber was a marvel of interstellar architecture, a vast dome of transparent alloy that revealed the stars above New Terra, the human colony that served as the Alliance's capital. James stood at the entrance, adjusting the formal military uniform the human diplomatic corps had insisted he wear for the occasion. His medals and commendations, long stored away, now adorned his chest. "You look uncomfortable," Lara observed, a teasing smile playing on her lips. She wore a flowing gown of Laraxi design, its iridescent fabric complementing her blue-tinged skin and silver hair, which had been elegantly styled for the occasion. "Give me a battlefield over politics any day," James grumbled, though his eyes softened as they took in her appearance. "You, however, look stunning." Duke, freshly groomed and wearing a special harness designating him as a service animal, sat obediently at their feet. The old shepherd had become something of a celebrity during their journey from Loran to New Terra aboard the Alliance diplomatic vessel, charming alien dignitaries with his dignified demeanor. "Are you ready?" James asked, offering his arm to Lara. She took a deep breath, her violet eyes meeting his. "As ready as I'll ever be." 3 weeks had passed since the Laraxi had approached them with the proposal: testify before the Galactic Alliance Council about the Crimson Talon's activities, providing first-hand evidence of their enslavement of the Aelori and their plans to attack human settlements. It was a dangerous gambit. The Talon had infiltrated many governments, and their assassins were legendary, but it was also their best chance to end the threat permanently. The journey had been tense, but also filled with moments of unexpected joy. The deeper connection that had formed between James and Lara continued to grow, their nights spent exploring each other's bodies and sharing whispered confidences. What had begun as an impulsive rescue in a dusty marketplace had transformed into something neither had dared hope for, a partnership that transcended their different species and histories. Now, as they entered the council chamber, James felt a familiar tension, the same alertness that had kept him alive through countless battles. His eyes scanned the assembled delegates, representing over 30 spacefaring civilizations. The human contingent, led by Admiral Helena Brown, nodded in acknowledgement as they took their designated seats. "The Council recognizes Captain James McCarthy and Lara of Aelor," announced the Council President, a dignified Centaurian with metallic skin. "You have been granted extraordinary access to this body due to the grave nature of your testimony. Proceed." James stepped forward first, his voice steady as he recounted finding Lara, their pursuit by Talon forces, and the intelligence they had gathered during their escape. He spoke with the authority of a veteran soldier, his words carrying the weight of experience. When Lara took the stand, a hush fell over the chamber. Her testimony was more personal. The brutal enslavement of her people, the torture used to force compliance, the systematic exploitation of their precognitive abilities to expand the Talon's criminal empire. "With the technology developed by the Laraxi," she explained, "I can demonstrate the accuracy of my claims." A murmur ran through the assembly as Laraxi technicians brought forward a device, a delicate crown of luminescent metal that Lara placed upon her head. As it activated, holographic projections appeared above the council floor, showing vivid images of Talon operations, their hidden bases, and most damning of all, their planned simultaneous attacks on 7 human colonies. These attacks are scheduled to begin within 14 standard days, Lara concluded, her voice steady despite the strain of using her abilities so publicly. The Talon believes that by striking human territories, they will create enough chaos to expand their operations unchallenged. The chamber erupted in debate. Some delegates questioned the reliability of precognitive evidence, while others demanded immediate military action. Through it all, James remained at Lara's side, his hand occasionally brushing hers in silent support. It was Admiral Brown who finally restored order. "The human delegation has already verified key elements of this testimony through our intelligence networks," she announced. "We move that the Alliance authorize a joint military operation to neutralize the Crimson Talon threat before these attacks can be launched." The vote was not unanimous. Several delegations with suspected Talon ties abstained, but the motion carried. As the session adjourned, James escorted Lara from the chamber, both exhausted but relieved. They had barely reached the antechamber when a commotion erupted behind them. James reacted instinctively, pushing Lara behind him as Duke growled a warning. 3 figures in diplomatic attire had drawn concealed weapons, Talon assassins making a desperate play. "Down!" James shouted, drawing the sidearm Admiral Brown had insisted he carry. The ensuing firefight was brief but intense. James's combat instincts hadn't dulled with age. 2 assassins fell to his precise shots before they could reach Lara. The third was tackled by Duke, the loyal shepherd latching onto the attacker's arm till Alliance security personnel swarmed in. "Are you hurt?" James asked Lara, checking her for injuries even as security formed a protective cordon around them. She shook her head, her eyes wide but calm. "I saw this possibility," she admitted. "It was always the most likely outcome once we testified." "You might have mentioned that," he said with a wry smile. "Would it have changed your mind?" "Not a chance." Admiral Brown approached them, her expression grim but respectful. "Captain McCarthy, your reflexes are still impressive. We've secured the chamber and detained several other suspected Talon agents. You and Lara will be under our protection until the operation is complete." "I want to be part of it," James said immediately. Brown raised an eyebrow. "You're retired, Captain." "Consider me temporarily unretired." He glanced at Lara. "These bastards enslaved her people and plan to attack our colonies. I've got a personal stake in this fight." After a moment's consideration, Brown nodded. "We could use someone with your experience. Report to the command center at 0600 tomorrow." The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of strategic planning and preparation. James was assigned as a tactical advisor to the Joint Task Force, his experience with both the Talon's methods and unconventional warfare proving invaluable. Lara worked with other rescued Elori who had been brought to New Terra, their combined abilities providing real-time intelligence on Talon movements. The night before the operation was to begin, James and Lara retreated to their assigned quarters, seeking comfort in each other's arms. Their lovemaking was tender yet urgent, each touch a promise, each kiss a declaration of feelings too profound for words. Afterward, as they lay entwined, Lara traced the scars on James's chest, badges of a lifetime of service and sacrifice. "I've seen our futures," she whispered. "So many possibilities branching out before us." "And," he prompted, his fingers playing with her silver hair, "in the brightest threads, we succeed tomorrow. The Talon's leadership falls, their operations collapse. My people are freed." She propped herself up on one elbow, her violet eyes serious. "But even in those futures, there are challenges ahead. The remaining Talon cells won't surrender easily. The Aelori will need to rebuild to find their place in the galaxy." "Sounds like a lifetime of work," James observed. "It is." She hesitated. "I wouldn't ask you to—" He silenced her with a gentle finger to her lips. "You don't need to ask. Where you go, I go. That's the deal." Her luminescent smile was all the answer he needed. The operation, when it came, was a testament to human military efficiency combined with alien technology and Elori foresight. Simultaneous strikes hit Talon bases across 3 sectors, including their hidden headquarters on Helios Prime. James led one of the assault teams, his tactical acumen proving decisive in minimizing casualties while maximizing impact. When it was over, when the reports confirmed the Talon leadership had been captured or eliminated and the planned attacks on human colonies thwarted, James found himself standing on an observation deck overlooking New Terra's capital city. Lara joined him, slipping her hand into his. "It's not completely finished," she said, ever the pragmatist. "There will be remnants, splinter groups." "There always are," he agreed, "but the worst of it is over. Your people are free. Thanks to you." She turned to face him fully. "You know, when I first saw you in that marketplace, this gruff human with his loyal dog, I glimpsed so many possible futures. But I never imagined this one would be so perfect." James laughed, the sound free of the bitterness that had colored it for so many years. "Perfect? We've been shot at, hunted across the galaxy, and nearly killed multiple times. And yet, here we are." She rose on tiptoes to kiss him, her cool lips meeting his warm ones, in a now familiar contrast that never failed to send a thrill through him. A Duke, who had been dozing nearby, raised his head and gave a soft woof of approval. As the sun set over New Terra, painting the sky in hues of gold and purple, James McCarthy, once a solitary man seeking oblivion on a dusty frontier world, found himself surrounded by new purpose and unexpected love. The universe, it seemed, had other plans for him than a quiet retirement. "So," he asked, his arm around Lara's waist, "what's next for us?" She smiled that luminescent smile that never failed to captivate him. The possibilities are endless.